In our previous episode of Extreme Reloading, I went through and I prepped 10 5.56 cases and 10 9mm cases. And what I found with those 10 5.56 cases is that not a one of those needed trimming. They all met the length test. So I grabbed another batch of 25 pieces of 5.56 brass, and 18 of those needed trimming or still need trimming. So we're going to start this episode of Extreme Reloading by trimming these 5.56 cases using a very standard approach. We're going to use a trim die to accomplish that. I'll show you how that works. Then I'm going to change gears a little bit, kind of kick it up a notch and go extreme on the trimming. And we're going to trim some 308 Winchester brass cases, not with a trim die, but rather with the Wilson trimming unit or trimming tool. I'll show you how that works. And then we're going to have to jump across to the case prep station, work on the mouths, we'll work on the primers, primer pockets, and that'll take us up to the end of this episode of Extreme Reloading. So, let's get busy. All right, well, here is our loading block. Notice that I have changed now. I'm using my RCBS green loading block. I was using the blue Frankfurt Arsenal loading block. Recall, I only use that in the beginning stages or steps of case prep because that blue Frankfurt Arsenal loading block is the one that takes the spray-on lubricant. I know it's not supposed to make a difference with the cases and it's not supposed to affect the plastic at all, but I went ahead and did that. I do that just to, I guess, be 100% sure that I'm not affecting the plastic and those sort of things on this. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about trimming. This is a trim die. You can get a trim die for pretty much any caliber that you want. Contact RCBS if you don't see the trim die that you need. I actually had them put together, or some dies you couldn't find anywhere else. This is the trim die. It says for 223 Remington, and it just does fine. It does perfectly fine. You don't need a fancy machine. It again satisfies those bare essential necessities in your equipment. Now there's two different types of files that you can use. They're hand files, and since we're not, converting this case from something else, a hand file will work perfectly fine. I'll start with this one here, a little bit for finer work. This is a mill type file, and we'll work that brass like this. Okay, you do not run this in both directions simultaneously. This big thing here is a flat bastard type of file. Yes, we can run this in both directions. It's designed for that. And this will take off material a lot faster. It does a little bit more coarse job on it, but it certainly does do the job. You're going to need your shell holder. This is RCBS shell holder number 10 in place. And let's go ahead and do some of these cases. Now, it doesn't need much, but it does need something. So we're going to use this mill type file just to take this down. It doesn't take long. You'd think, boy, this is going to take me forever to do this. No, it really doesn't. If you have a lot of material, you can use this flat bastard, and it really takes it off fast. That is a finished mouth. Doesn't look very pretty, but we're going to get them there. We're going to put this on the case prep station here in just a little while. Let me get through these 18 that I have to work on. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in my videos that I showed before, we're working simultaneously on 5.56 and 9mm. I normally don't do that, and I do not recommend that. Do not work on several different reloading projects at the same time. I'm only doing that for the sake of these videos. It's far too easy to get confused what you're doing. What step was I on here and there? Of course, we do use our case prep checklist. That is extremely important, very, very helpful to do that. But still, focus your attention, don't make any mistakes, be extremely systematic on what you're doing, and you will be able to easily produce safe and reliable ammo without any problems whatsoever. I'm going to get back to these, finish these 18, and then we'll head over to the case prep station. Well, that's finished now, and these two over here I set aside. I want to show you something. When you're using a file like this flat bastard, versus a mill-type file again does a finer job. What sometimes happens is that you will grab that case on one of the first couple of strokes and it'll actually dent. I've actually flattened it out on this side as that file was pushing material this way. And so what do? Do I chuck this? No, not at all. I'm simply going to need to run this through the sizing die one more time, at least through the point of cleaning up and expanding this neck once again. We're going to talk about some more extreme or precision type of case prep in a later episode, and we're going to then talk about using a specific expander die. I'll show you how that thing works. But for this instance, we can get this cleaned up. It does happen sometimes. It happened on 2 of the 18 that I worked with. If you want to avoid that, simply use a mill-type file instead, and I've never had that happen with those. But next step, actually, before I move over to the case prep station, is I need to wipe down and remove all of that leftover lubricant, any leftover lubricant that might be on these cases. A couple reasons for that is, number one, it makes handling these cases, especially when we're working on the chamfering and the primer pockets, especially the primer pockets, it makes handling these things a whole lot easier. They don't slip. The case doesn't slip in your hands. Number two, we want to make sure that these cases are as clean as possible as we go through that reloading process and when we shoot. We don't want any lubricant left on these cases whatsoever. That can dramatically increase pressures on those things. You'd be amazed. The reports that I've seen of loading and shooting wet, as people call it, wet cases, I wouldn't do that intentionally, and I certainly don't want to do it even accidentally. So I'm going to remove all this, and well, let's go ahead and I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll head over to that case prep station. A good way to use these loading blocks is to not fill these things up when you're doing a batch of brass. What I like to do is maybe, 3/4 of the way filled or about half filled, and as I complete one step, I will be moving, that brass case from one side of the block to another side of the block. Okay, so great way to remember that these have not been done. These have not run through the case prep station, but anything over here has been done. Bare necessities, let's talk about that. This is a case that has been trimmed and it needs some work on the mouth, and it also needs some work on the primer pocket. Bare necessities, what you need to do and what you need to have is something like this RCBS deburring tool or burring tool, and this will take care of it. This is our chamfer and deburr tool. Very inexpensive, easy to use, and it is a bare necessity because you will at some point be trimming cases and then need to clean them up. That looks good. Now let's go to the primer pocket. And you'll need something like this, a primer pocket brush. Bare minimum again. And it does a pretty nice job. But it takes a little bit of extra elbow grease to do that. A little bit more time to use these hand tools. And if you're doing a lot of cases, especially with this, you're going to feel it in your wrist and stuff, and your thumb and stuff eventually. So, yeah, there are maybe easier ways, but it's going to take a little bit of an extra investment on your part to do that. I also wanted to mention this chamfering tool. Notice the difference in the angle between these two tools. They both are chamfering tools. This tool is a VLD, very low drag chamfering tool. Well, the tool itself is not a VLD, but it's called that because it's recommended that we use this sort of chamfer, put this angle of chamfer on the case mouth if we're going to be using very low drag, in other words, long for caliber bullets. I started using this. I have another one right here in my machine. I've seen no ill effects from it. Can't say that it improves precision, but it does seem to improve seating bullets, especially those long for caliber type of bullets. So we've got the bare minimums type of thing done. Let's go ahead and run through the same process on this machine. Now notice I have not just two steps here. There's our deburr and chamfer, so there's essentially the same tool there. But over here I have my primer pocket brush. That's that. But I have two more. Okay, so what is this? What is all this stuff? This is, of course, the same thing, a primer pocket brush. And you know, that brush I was using looked more like this. They always tend to do that. So I got tired of buying new ones, and what I did is I purchased a set of solid metal, sort of a brush, a primer pocket cleaner. This is really good. It does a beautiful job, and this is now for a lifetime. Nothing will happen to these things. The second station right over here, I work from here around like this. The second station here is my mill crimp remover. So there's a lot of mill surplus, military surplus brass. We're going to talk more about that later. There's a lot of military surplus brass that you're almost certainly going to buy some of that blasting ammo, target or range ammo. And a lot of it will have a crimp on the primer. Okay, there'll be a crimp on the primer pocket. You need to remove that if you're going to put in a new primer. So that helps remove that. I'll also show you when we get to that part another tool, a assuaging tool that guarantees you will not have any problems with inserting a new primer, and it will completely remove that. Between this and the second one, you'll have no problems whatsoever. We'll get there later. This is a primer pocket uniformer, and what it does, it will make sure that the primer pocket is the same depth. It has a nice flattened sealing, as we call it, and it will improve, no doubt about it. This whole step here will improve the precision of your ammo. Consistency equals accuracy, and these steps, especially something like this, we're going to talk more about preparing primer pockets later, but definitely will improve precision. Is it necessary to do all of this sort of stuff? No, not really. If you know that you're using milsurp ammo, yeah, you're going to have to do this. Otherwise, you won't be able to seat a new primer into it. This is kind of kicking it up a notch, making it a little bit extreme. So let's go ahead and run through this. I like to use these gloves. Just pick these up at Harbor Freight. There's a couple different styles. They have a nice rubbery texture, which helped me hold on to these things. especially if we did not get all of that spray lubricant off. We want to get it off as much as possible, but you won't always get it all off. There we go. Let's go ahead and run this through. Primer pocket brush. Clean up any primer crimp right there. Uniform the primer pocket. This one sometimes needs a little torque, a little bit of elbow grease. Come out nice and clean though. I like to run them just like that. Second or two here, second or two there, and that's what it's going to look like. Now you might notice you got some shavings inside there. We don't want to load that and shoot that down the barrel. One push. You're fine. It's got it cleaned up. Now, can you do this too much? Well, let's find out. I'm just going to work away at this. Oh boy, look at there. I'm going to get this as good as possible, I think, you know. Yeah, that is not what I want. I'm actually going to trash this thing. That's not necessary, right? I mean, even if I take out the little shavings so we can see it a little bit better, that's not the type of chamfer that we want to see. So don't do too much of this. You just need a little bit. So 1,000, 2, 1,000, boom. You know, a couple seconds over here. You can tell when this one's done, a couple seconds there. A little bit there, a little bit there, back to there, finish it, done. Let me finish all of these, then we're going to do the same type of step working with a 9mm Luger. Just got 10 of these, and once again, you could do the exact same thing. I know some folks don't even clean primer pockets on 9mm Luger, and you really don't do anything to the case mouths. So even just a little bit of work with this brush right here just cleans it right up. If you're doing a whole bunch of them, you are, didn't do a great job either. You're going to save some time overall using the machine. That's it, just that little bit. Take a look at one. This one's not even too bad to begin with. We'll run it through there. Get her nice and clean. That one's pretty filthy. Now notice that these do have a kind of a variability to how dirty those primer pockets are. So you will see some benefit by doing this process. You'll get a little bit more consistent ammunition that you're producing. I don't think that the safety and reliability is going to be much of an issue. But again, just a couple seconds per case. You'll be all set. Looking pretty good. Now the next step on the 9mm or any of our semi-auto pistol cases, any of the pistol cases I should say, is where we have to bell or expand the mouths. Okay, we'll show that. We'll catch that in our next video. We'll talk more about that. Catch up on that, show you that process. Very simple process, and it is the reason why there are 3 dies when you buy a set of pistol dies, and there's only 2 dies when you buy a set of rifle dies. But what I want to do now is we're going to hop back over to the main workbench, and we're going to look at the Wilson trimmer, which is a more precise way to trim your brass cases. This is my Wilson case trimmer. Really an excellent machine, or tool, I should say. Right now it's set up for my 308 Winchester. That's what we'll be working with, or I'll be demonstrating. But this would also work for the 243 Winchester, simply because that is the same parent case. And then I also have another one already set up for my 6.5 Grendel. Now I got this block when I purchased this all at once from Creedmoor Sports. Very nicely set up. This is our tapping block. I'll be referring to that. And then of course I can store additional pieces for it right back here. I can do about 6 of them at a time. Let's go ahead and run through a case. So the process goes like this. We'll take a case, 308 Winchester. It is ready for this step. Got to do some trimming on it. And I'm going to insert it. This line here is a good indicator of how you insert the case. Don't put it in from this side. Then we tap it on the tapping block just a little bit. Set it here on these rails. This has all been set up, very adjustable, but it's been set up, it's been tooled up for the 308. I put this right here. Now, before I start actually trimming, I like to put just a couple of drops of cutting oil right in there. There's the cutting edges right there. It's been used. And see how that's going to do that? It can only move so far. And once it hits that maximum, it cannot cut any more at all. And this is a very precise way of trimming. It also trims extremely flush or straight this way. You may have noticed when I was cutting or trimming those 223 cases that some of them came out, well, they were kind of lopsided this way, not exactly flush. Well, we made them more flush by using the chamfer and deburr tools, kind of clean that up a little bit. But this is an extremely well cut or well trimmed mouth. Now the next step is chamfer and deburr, same stuff. So we trim first, then of course we need to chamfer and deburr, and we then clean up those primer pockets. Not much work necessary on this one. To get this out, tap it on the mouth, and that's it. Well, we made some good progress today, didn't we? In our next episode, we're going to be continuing along in this process, and we're going to be belling or expanding the mouth of those 9mm Luger cases. We're also going to be talking about expanding the mouth of the 308 Winchester. It doesn't bell the mouth like we do on the 9mm Luger and those other pistol cases, but it's still called expanding. I'll show you what that process is. And we're going to continue on in this whole process talking about cleaning that brass using an ultrasonic cleaner. We'll talk about the different methodologies available there. And then that'll probably wrap us up for that next episode. Down the line, we're also going to be talking about some special steps that need to be done whenever you're working with military surplus or mil-serp brass. So thanks for watching. If you've got questions, if you've got any questions, go ahead and post those in the comments. And if you're a brand new reloader, you may have lots of questions. I'm trying to cover things as well as I can, but it's very likely I'm forgetting something or just not covering it sufficiently. So if you've got questions, don't be afraid about looking like a novice, anything like that. Go ahead and ask that question. I'd be happy to answer that and help you learn lots more about this wonderful world of reloading that I've been at for a long time. Again, thanks for watching.